soul starts to linger. It's home, I know. If you catch me daydreaming now and forever, thoughts are carrying me along to that place we call home. Down that long road, throughout life we roam. Whenever I go to that place I know it'll always be home, home to me.
Another fascinating saga from the history books. He was called the Lake Erie Baron. Colonel Thomas Talbot was a secretary to Governor Simcoe, and by favor, he was granted a huge section of land here in southwestern Ontario. That sound familiar? Anyway, Talbot and his henchmen ruled this area as though it were the feudal days. It became known as the Talbot Settlement. Now, it's Elgin County, and its stories are as intriguing as the people who settled here. The Chicago to New York evening freight rumbles through, and ending their shift just as their fathers and their fathers before them. Brakemen, conductors, engineers, coming home to the railway city. St. Thomas has worn that title since mid-century last, when it, along with nearby London, became the railway hub of southwestern Ontario. Even though times have changed, the main street, longer and straighter than most, paralleling the tracks, reminds its residents that this place was forged from the ribbon of steel. Today it is the administrative center for Elgin County, a vast area south of the city of London, fronting along Lake Erie. The name St. Thomas is a contradiction, for it commemorates the name of a character who made this territory his prized fiefdom. A saint he was not. Teacher and history buff, son of a trainman, Wayne Padden.
Colonel Talbot was a British soldier. He had been here as an aide-de-camp to Lieutenant Governor Simcoe. And the whole reason for them being here was to get ready for an attack by the Americans. Around 1800, he left the military and came to this area to settle. So Talbot was offered a small amount of land at Port Stanley, but that was not enough for Talbot. He wanted a bigger chunk of land. So on the pretext of a hemp farm, he was given 5,000 acres at what we call Port Talbot. That's about 11 miles from where we're sitting. And the idea was that he would bring in 50 settlers and give them 100 acres each. And in doing, there would be a small settlement at Port Talbot. Now his reward for that, because he wanted a farm, would be 150 acres for each settler that he landed on his property, 150 acres in either Aldborough or Dunwich. Well, he never intended to give any of that land away. So what he did, because he wasn't getting settlers, he got a few, but not enough. So he had to open the roads. And he went to the government in 1809 and asked for a deal where he would become commissioner of the roads. So he would open the roads and bring settlers in, but he wanted control over settlings along the road. He had a simple solution for doing this. He put you on the property, and he said, if you want to stay here, Within 5 years, you'll have 4 or 5 acres under cultivation and a house built, a homestead, and the road will be cleared in front of your property. And then he wrote your name on a big map in his Port Talbot home and in pencil. And then if you didn't have the road open within 4 or 5 years, he rubbed your name off and he put somebody else on. What he did was, from the very beginning, was to bring in a young surveyor and a military man by the name of Malin Burwell. Now, Burwell's the big, tall, secretive, powerful, bad guy. Burwell was the surveyor, and he laid out the roads. Okay. Burwell was also the justice of peace and the sheriff. So if there was a problem when he threw you off the property, you had to go back to Burwell. Okay. The court of county, or the court of county sessions or whatever, had Burwell as one of the main judges and Talbot. So if you took your case to a higher court, you couldn't win there. And you guess who the member of parliament was for all the London district for about 15 or 20 years? Malin Burwell. And Talbot was on the council. So we had our own little family compact right here.
No, he didn't burn in the fires of hell, but did receive his just desserts. Talbot was eventually tossed out of office with a terse note from the governor of the day telling him, "You have been rubbed out." It wasn't long before the Victorian age was caught up in the Industrial Revolution, and St. Thomas wasn't going to go unnoticed. The word was out, and the industries wasted no time in gearing up. The American railways, looking for a shortcut, could chop some 800 miles off their route if a strip of land could be leased where they could run their lines north of Lake Erie through Canada via Windsor and Sarnia to Niagara Falls. At a point midway, they would create a service and manufacturing center, just the ticket the town was looking for. For the next 80-odd years, St. Thomas never looked back, for she found herself on the right track. Oh, boy. Old 5700. Boy, it must have been an exciting day when a 300-ton monster like this came roaring down the tracks at 100 miles an hour, sometimes more. By the turn of the century, most industry here catered to the railway. Just about every family had a connection of one kind or another to either building or operating the old iron horse. Of some 2,000 miles of track prior to 1867, 2/3 was laid in what is now Ontario. The Great Western, the Canada Southern, the airline, railway fever.
Everything depended on the railways. Railway payday was the biggest day in town. The railway shops covered the city with dirt and cinders, and you were always getting something in your eye, and your mom did the washing, it was always covered with cinders. That was a way of life. Nobody complained.
They smoked, rattled, and bumped, but they were the magic carpet of the 19th century. Even in the heat and grime of factories, the pounding of the forge was to the rhythm of the rail. They talked the language of coal and steam. Working on the railway often meant shifts of 7 days a week, but even a conductor needed a break every once in a while.
If you came in, you'd be out the next morning. And my dad had made up his mind he wasn't going to go out. And he told him, I'm not going out. And no matter what you do, I'm taking a day off. And they said, no, you're not, Slim, you're not taking a day off. You're going out if we call you. And so he said to my mom, just call in and book me sick. She said, no, I'm not going to lie for you, Harold. I won't lie, and I'm not lying for you. He said, well, you're going to have to. No, I won't do it. So if they couldn't get you on the phone, they got on their bike and they came over to the house. And we were home, and we were all upstairs in bed on Balaclava Street. And there were 6 kids, and we're all pretty small. My dad's up there, and this red-faced Charlie McLean, who was one of the was a real character, came to the door, and he pounded on the door. And he pounded on the door again, and by God, the door opened. We forgot to lock the door, and he stuck his hand in, and he said, Harold! He said, are you up there, Harold? And everybody's going. And he says, I know you're up there, Slim. I know you're up there. And my mother says, no, he's not. He's not here. So with that, away away went Charlie McLean, and boy, my mother gave my dad hell about having a life for him. But then my dad, being the great guy he was, went in the next day and gave Charlie McLean the devil for coming in the house.
Along the old Colonel's Road, now called Highway 3, is Aylmer. Catfish Corners, named after Catfish Creek, was the sleepy hollow of Elgin County, slowly developing in the shadow of Talbot's autocratic rule and St. Thomas's monopoly of industry. Observed in its farmers' market today are economic and cultural influences that set it apart from its county neighbors. It was the fertile soil of the region that attracted people from as far away as Nova Scotia, and also a society of Amish Mennonites. They gained the attention of the curious because of their dress and ways of old. But it is for some of these ways that get lost in our 20th century world, for which they are esteemed. Their close-knit order upholds the values of interdependence and working as a community. Insurance means support by the brethren in times of need. And senior family members remain at home in the family unit as the younger generation takes over the more rigorous responsibilities. The town has risen many times, phoenix-like, over the last century, after major fires razed factories and sections of its downtown core. To this was added the unachievable goal of developing a nearby Lake Erie harbor, Port Bruce, to attract settlement and facilitate shipping of goods. Products included an eclectic mix: tanning hides, prepared pork, and pump organs. Foremost to the Mennonites of the Aylmer region is a reverence for the land. Without electricity and advanced technology, their industriousness is an asset to the county. This same dependence on the land gave birth to industries that eventually brought prosperity. The Aylmer Canning and Evaporating Company, one of the first operations of its kind, began in 1881, and for 70 years, Aylmer Canners, as it was known, was the main employer of the town. Sir John A.'s early national policy, encouraging the flow of Ontario's manufactured goods along the newly completed CPR to settlers in the prairie provinces, was the momentum the company needed. Within a decade, the town's name was visible in kitchen pantries across Canada. Cabby, tell me that story about your father. Your father started all this because he liked another part of the country.
Yes, my dad was a deer hunter and a fisherman, and every fall he used to go up to Muskoka and hunt deer. Well, he said one day, I won't always be going up there. He went up there for about 50 years. And he said, I think I'll build my Muskoka.
To make his own.
Yes. So he dammed up our little trout stream, brook trout bearing there, and made his northern lake. And then in this area here, he planted 85,000 pine trees.
85,000? 85,000.
Some of them were white pine and others were red pine.
And here, In this Muskoka of Elgin County, Cavi and Jimmy Clennell have spent nearly a lifetime. To this Golden Pond setting, they have combined his years of experience at Alberta's famous Medalta Potteries with her love of the many moods of clay. The result, Pinecroft, a story in itself. You've been doing it for 40 years.
You want to know when I started and then how old I am?
You want to tell me? I'll bet you lie about your age.
Well, I'll be 88 next month.
88.
I was born in 1900.
Well, I hope I'm still making pottery when I'm 88 years old. Do you do it every day? Do you work with it every day?
Not now, I don't.
No.
Just whenever I feel like it.
Where do you sell all this stuff, Jim?
Right on the on the showroom on the other side.
You're kidding. You
Yes.
don't, you don't have a salesman peddling your wares around the countryside?
No.
Not anymore.
Everybody comes here.
Everyone comes here, yes. We can't make enough.
Is that right?
Right,
How much would you sell during the season? Well, you keep going all winter?
Well, that's when we do most of our production is in the winter
Yeah,
time.
so you'd have a stock for
So we have a stock for the
the
spring.
tourist season.
Yes. It's kind of fun. We get them from England and Holland and Belgium and all over creation.
Where would you say that Pinecroft pottery can be found now?
Oh gosh, Australia, Europe, even in Japan you'll find some.
India.
In India?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now ease off on your pressure. Oh, but
Hey, how about that?
now you see, you didn't love the clay enough. When you got to the top, you flew off, and the clay flew off too.
Okay.
Thumbs together.
Comes together.
Yeah. Curl your fingers. Curl them, you know.
And then, I'm not holding it right. No.
Well, now that is a masterpiece.
I guess I can't put it back on there.
No, you can't put it back on.
Thumbs together. I knew that. I became a man on the Donald T. That skipper, the finest a teacher could be. The man, the game, the lake that taught me. Gulls and cliffs and old Elf Sun, Plum Point, Red Barn, and Grand Canyon. Inside, outside, up the lake and down is the love of Port Stanley, this fisherman's town. A little verse by a local poet that pretty well describes one aspect of this corner of the Talbot settlement, yet another face of Elgin County. One who has his roots here, Frank Prothero.
The town owes its origins to two or three sources, all of them very interesting. One of them is commercial fishing. It's been a commercial fishing village since the 1850s, and at one time was the largest fishing port in Ontario. Another aspect of its growth and origins was the railroad. Port Stanley was one of the first small communities to get a railroad. It arrived here in 1856 from London and gave the town a commercial boost at a very early date. It has also been a tourist town, and what we see right here now is a combination of the tourism and the commercial fishing. People are attracted by the atmosphere of a small fishing village.
As the railway was to St. Thomas, the land to Aylmer, the lake has similar meaning to generations living here. The fishing industry remains as the bread and butter of Port Stanley. Here, where Kettle Creek flows into Lake Erie to form a natural harbor, pleasure craft maneuver among the workboats. And still doing much the same job as in the days of its beginnings, the little train that spelled fun when its final destination was reached. Earlier in this century, the thing to do on any given summer weekend was to buy a round-trip ticket on the LNPS, the London and Port Stanley Railway. The terminal here on Lake Erie would swarm with people come from miles around. Come to dance, come to listen to the hottest music of the big band era, played in the largest ballroom on the continent.
From the sumptuous Stork Club on the shores of lovely Lake Erie, it's Guy Lombardo and the sweetest music this side of heaven.
London's famous native son, Guy Lombardo, began his career in the era when Dorsey and Goodman were royalty and the Stork Club their castle. Rivaling the Steel Pier in Atlantic City and the Palmer in Hollywood, Port Stanley came to be known as the Coney Island of the Great Lakes. The first hotel to be built, Fraser House, started the trend. The incline railway got you up to Picnic Hill for 2.5 cents, and the LNPS to the summer playground for $1. Today, it has another noteworthy destination.
Started back in 1853 as a freight line from Port Stanley up to London to haul goods that was brought in by ship. Trestle was built in 1896, which was only 92 years ago. And we take the passengers across. We usually tell them it's pretty scary, and a lot of them do get scared on it. On the way back, we usually ask them to pick up their feet to take some of the weight off the train as we go across the trestle.
When did the LNPS start up again?
In 1983, the Port Stanley Rail started up. A group of volunteers started it and started the tourist train from Port Stanley to Union.
I like that idea of going to Union Station.
That's right.
Probably
Smallest
the best
passenger station in Canada.
I guess he wasn't putting me on. Union Station, Union, Ontario. The county of Elgin. Its people, its places.